everybody, welcome back to Crochet Through Corona. So we now have a completed Easter egg. Well, we've got the completed inside of the Easter egg, and we've worked on our increases to get it looking larger at the bottom here, and then we've worked on our decreases to bring it into the point at the top, but it's looking a little bit misshapen. So we're now going to learn to crochet around the outside to turn it from this into this. So I've left off after this last decrease, so I now have just the one stitch at the top, and I'm going to chain one, just as we would if we were turning, but we don't turn this time. Instead, we're going to start working along the outside of the Easter egg. Now, there's not an exact science to this. It is kind of a trial and error of what works best, and everybody has their own way of doing it. There are some advice techniques which I will try and share with you, but please don't get too hung up. Just do what works for you. If you find it a bit fiddly, there are easier ways to do it, as I'll show you as we go along. So just find the way that you can get it done, and then you're not getting too cross, because this is supposed to be a fun process, not a stressful one. If you're anything like me, my stress levels are rising by the day as my children are getting more and more cabin fevery and increasingly troublesome. But hey ho, here we are with some crochet therapy to bring all those stress levels down a little bit and reset before we start again. So we've got our chain one. And now when we're doing a single crochet, the general rule is that we need to do a single crochet in the end of every row that we've made. So we've worked out how to learn where the rows are. So there's a row, and there's another row, another row. And we're going to crochet into the ends of each of these rows. So to do this, the first one is quite a nice easy one. We've got this big hole here, and that is where we're going to work into. Just as we have with all our other single crochets, we're pretending that this is the top of the stitch, and we're just going to insert our hook, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, and pull through both loops. And that is our first one. Now we're moving down to the next row. This one is a little bit more tricky. I'm going to show you the more tricky way of doing it first, and then if this is too fiddly, then I'll show you the easier way. Okay, so the more tricky way is, the best option is to always get two pieces of yarn over your hook, as if you were doing it like through a normal stitch, like the V stitch. So if you can see here, that's one piece of yarn on, and there's a second piece. So we've kind of like created our own mini V shape just there. And then we yarn over, pull through, yarn over, and pull through both. And that is the more tricky way of doing it, because it is a bit fiddly to find those two pieces of yarns to go through. The easier way to do it is to insert your hook straight into this gap here. So you can see there's a nice hole there, and you can go straight into there, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through. The downside to doing it this way is that you will create a bigger hole just here, so your finished product will look a little bit more holy. Given it's Easter, maybe that's appropriate, but it's up to you. So if you don't mind that look, then you can do that. If you want to challenge yourself a little bit more, we look for 2 threads to go underneath here, and then yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through. And this will vary on difficulty depending on how tight you've crocheted your egg. The more tight you've crocheted, the slightly harder you will find it to insert between those 2 threads there. So the next row is this nice easy loop hole just here. We're just going to insert through, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through. And then we're on to one of the more tricky ones again, so we just look for the 2 pieces of yarn. Sometimes it does require a little bit of wiggling around to find it, so I think I found mine there. And pull through, yarn over, pull through. And then moving on to the nice easy hole again. Yarn over, pull through. And we basically just repeat that all the way around. So I'm going to just keep going. You can watch as I go. So I'm finding the inside of that one, and then I'm looking down the back of that stitch there, and there you go, I found it. And then into that hole, and then there's one of the tricky ones again. And you do need to use your other fingers to just guide it. Also, I should mention, you don't want to pull your tension too tight, because if you do, you'll get your egg kind of curling inwards. So you need to keep a fairly loose tension as you're going around the outside. And then here's my second to last one for this side. This is getting a little bit trickier. So when we're going to insert this second bit of hook, I'm going to go underneath that bit just there. And then I've arrived back at the foundation chain. So I just insert my hook into that first loop of the foundation chain. Now I'm going to teach you a little tip here. If you're not enjoying sewing in your ends, I'm not ever a big fan of sewing in the ends, here's a little cheat way that you can avoid sewing it in after. So this is the end from where we cast on at the beginning, and I'm just going to hold it along the edge of my work. And then as I crochet along, I'm going to trap it in between the in between the stitches, so that at the end I can just chop it off rather than bothering to keep sewing it in. So as you can see, it's here. I'm just going to lay it across the top of the work. I'm going to insert my hook underneath the next foundation chain and underneath the tail end and create a single crochet, and that's now trapped inside that stitch, and we carry on for a little way to make sure it's really secure. So I'm doing the same again. There's the tail end. I'm putting it over the top of that foundation chain. I'm inserting underneath both the foundation chain and the tail end and making my single crochet, and then we're ready to come back up the other side. Oh no, I've got another foundation chain to do. There's my fourth one. Remember, there were 4 foundation chains. Well, there was 5, but one of them was our turning chain. And then we're coming back up the side. So the first stitch is a nice easy one into that hole. The second, I find coming up this second side quite tricky. I think this is because it's the turning chains, which are a little bit more tricky to find 2 threads to come through. You might need to just fiddle around with your hook a little bit to use the hook function to pinch up a bit and then dive underneath another one. There we go, I've managed to find 2 threads there, but again, if you are finding it too tricky, you can just go on the other side of there and into that hole, and that would be absolutely fine. And I'm again going to keep my tail end over the top of the hooks that I'm trapping it in. I'm just going to do that probably for 2 more stitches, and then I can feel confident that it's very secure. The next stitch is in this hole here, and then I'm going to drop this tail end and ignore that from now on. So I'm feeling happy that that is quite secure in there. And I'm looking for the two threads on the way up this side to single crochet into. And then I'm coming into this small hole here. Can you see it there? And into another tricky one. I'm going to go in there. As I say, not an exact science. You find where it's easy for you to insert your hook. You want to make sure you've got enough stitches for the amount of rows, otherwise you will end up having it curled up. So we have done, I think, let me just double check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 rows. So we need to have at least 11 stitches coming up there outside. And when we get to the top, I'm going to insert underneath that last stitch from our decrease at the end of making our inner part of the egg. So I'm inserting it underneath that last stitch there, and I'm going to do a single crochet. I'm then going to go into the turning chain here, and I'm not actually going to do that. I'm going to show you how to do an invisible join. So this is going to be our last stitch. So that was our last one in the top of the Easter egg. I'm then going to pull out the yarn and cut it off. And pull through to fasten off. And now we're going to mimic a stitch but using our sewing technique. So I'm going to thread my yarn onto my darning needle, and we're in. And if you can see on each stitch, we've got this V shape. I keep banging on about V shapes, they're quite important. And we're going to mimic that with the way that we sew in. So I'm going to take this yarn, I'm going to go underneath the next stitch. So I'm just trying to find the underneath the next stitch here. I just went into my finger. I'm pulling through. And then to finish that stitch, the mimic stitch, I'm going to go back into this V shape here. So I'm inserting it back into where that yarn is coming out of, and I'm going to thread it down the back of the work. And as you can see, it now looks like the stitches just continue on round. And then I'm going to do exactly the same as I do with all the other fastening off techniques. I'm going to go in, weaving through a few threads, and I go back into 3 times. That's 1. Finding some different threads on my way back. 2, and then final run. 3, and I can just cut that off. And then if you remember, because we trapped this in, I can just chop this one off without any sewing in. If you decided not to do that, which is absolutely fine, you will just need to sew in your end there. I am just going to chop it off. And I'm quite pleased to not have to fiddle with that. Now, with your ends that you're cutting off, can I suggest you keep hold of them rather than just putting them in the bin? I have my little pot here that I like to add all my ends to. And they will prove to be quite good stuffing materials for some of the other projects that we're going to be making in a few weeks' time. And now we have our completed Easter egg. Well done, everybody. Hopefully you are feeling like you have achieved something quite impressive there. You've learned to increase, decrease and crochet around the outside of the egg to give you a nice, neat, finished egg pattern. Now in the next couple of videos I'm going to show you how you can change the colour of the outside of your egg, and how you can add a chain to the top of your egg so that you can hang it off a tree if you have an Easter tree, and also how you can decorate your egg either using crochet or embroidery. So do check it out the next few videos to develop your skills further, but in the meantime, happy practicing and happy hooking.